There comes a moment in life when you realize that your presence is not an obligation, it is a privilege. And when that privilege is abused, when you are disrespected, manipulated, or undervalued, you must understand the greatest tool at your disposal: walking away. A narcissist operates on a fundamental principle: control. Their sense of power is not rooted in genuine strength or self-sufficiency, but rather in their ability to dictate the emotional and psychological landscape of those around them. They carefully construct a reality where they are the center, where everything revolves around their needs, desires, and perceptions. However, this illusion is entirely dependent on the participation of others, particularly those who provide them with validation, admiration, or even conflict. The moment you walk away, the entire dynamic shifts and the power they once wielded begins to dissolve. At the core of a narcissist's behavior is a deep, often unconscious fear of losing control. They thrive in relationships where they dictate the emotional tone, where their needs come first, and where they can manipulate circumstances to serve their agenda. They create an environment where the people around them are constantly second-guessing themselves, questioning their worth, and seeking approval. This keeps the narcissist in a position of dominance, because as long as they can influence your emotions, they can maintain their control. They manufacture situations that make you feel dependent on them, whether through subtle belittling, gaslighting, or even love bombing, where they overwhelm you with attention before withdrawing it to create a sense of instability. This cycle ensures that you remain engaged, constantly striving to regain the approval or validation that they intermittently provide. The power a narcissist holds over you is only as strong as the energy you give them. They are not self-sustaining. They require a constant supply of attention, whether positive or negative. If they can't get admiration, they will settle for conflict. If they can't be praised, they will provoke a reaction through cruelty or emotional withdrawal. This is because, at their core, they fear irrelevance. Their entire identity is dependent on being seen, on mattering to someone, even if it is through negative reinforcement. As long as you are engaging, whether in love, anger, frustration, or sadness, they feel powerful. But the second you disengage, the foundation of their power begins to crumble. Walking away is not just a physical act, it is an energetic and psychological shift. When you remove your focus, your emotional investment, and your need for their approval, you disrupt the dynamic that has kept them in control. Suddenly, they are faced with a reality they cannot manipulate. Their words lose their weight, their tactics lose their effectiveness. The person they once controlled is now out of their grasp, and they have no way of reestablishing their dominance. This is where the narcissist begins to panic. Without their ability to influence your emotions, they feel powerless. The absence of your reactions forces them to confront the void within themselves, the very void they have spent a lifetime avoiding. This is why a narcissist often resorts to desperate measures when they sense you are slipping away. They may shift their behavior, oscillating between grand gestures of affection and cruel attempts to devalue you. They might try to guilt-trip you, playing the victim to make you feel responsible for their suffering. Or they might lash out, trying to provoke a reaction just to confirm that they still have some level of control over your emotions. But these are not signs of love or genuine remorse. These are signs of a crumbling power structure, an individual who realizes that they are no longer the dominant force in your life. A key realization in this shift is understanding that the narcissist never actually held real power to begin with. The power they had was borrowed from you. They thrived off of your kindness, your empathy, your willingness to see the good in them, even when they showed you otherwise. They depended on your ability to justify their actions, to make excuses for their behavior, to believe that if you just loved them enough, they would change. But the truth is, they were never in control. You just didn't recognize your own strength. When you finally do, when you reclaim your emotional independence, they are left with nothing but the reflection of their own inadequacy. This is why the most effective way to disempower a narcissist is not through confrontation, not through trying to make them understand your pain, but through detachment. Narcissists are experts at drawing people back in, using whatever means necessary to regain control. But when you walk away fully, emotionally, and mentally, they lose their ability to influence your reality. And without that influence, they are nothing more than a person desperately seeking validation in a world that no longer revolves around them. A narcissist does not function in isolation. Their sense of self, their very identity, is built upon the reactions, emotions, and attention of those around them. They do not have a stable internal foundation of self-worth or confidence. Instead, they rely on external validation to fuel their fragile ego, constantly seeking admiration, control, or even conflict to reaffirm their sense of importance. This is what psychologists refer to as narcissistic supply, the steady stream of emotional responses that keep them feeling relevant and powerful, whether it is praise, fear, anger, or even pain. Any reaction you provide feeds them. But the moment you walk away, the moment you refuse to engage, that supply is cut off, and they are left with nothing but their own emptiness. Narcissists are highly skilled at creating an environment where they remain at the center of your emotional world. They condition you to respond to them, to seek their approval, to fear their rejection, and to constantly adjust your behavior in ways that accommodate their needs. This process is often subtle, starting with charm and admiration before gradually shifting into a cycle of emotional highs and lows designed to keep you off balance. They learn what makes you tick, what makes you happy, and what makes you hurt, and they use this information strategically to maintain their control. As long as they can elicit a reaction from you, they feel powerful. But when you stop responding, when you emotionally detach, the dynamic shifts entirely. Without a steady stream of attention, a narcissist is forced to confront something they spend their entire lives avoiding, their own inadequacy. Beneath the carefully constructed facade of confidence and superiority lies an insecure, fragile individual who depends on others to feel whole. They have no true self-sufficiency, no ability to generate genuine self-esteem from within. Instead, they depend on the admiration or suffering of those around them to validate their existence. Without someone there to reflect back an image of importance, they begin to unravel. It is not just about losing a person. It is about losing the energy source that sustains them. This is why narcissists will go to extreme lengths to prevent you from walking away. They know, even if subconsciously, that their emotional survival depends on the presence of others who feed their ego. When they sense that they are losing control, they may suddenly shift their behavior, becoming overly affectionate or making grand promises of change. They might try to guilt trip you, reminding you of everything they have done for you or accusing you of being selfish for leaving. If that does not work, they might switch tactics entirely, resorting to anger, blame, or even outright cruelty in an attempt to provoke a reaction. The goal is never genuine reconciliation. It is about reestablishing control. As long as you are still reacting, whether in love or frustration, they still have a hold over you. What makes this process even more distressing for a narcissist is that their ability to easily replace people is not as effortless as they like to pretend. While they may quickly seek out new sources of supply, the reality is that finding someone willing to tolerate their manipulations takes time. A new person may not immediately respond in the same way you did. They may not be as forgiving, as emotionally invested, or as easy to control. This creates a gap, a period where the narcissist left without a stable source of validation, and in this space, their internal insecurities begin to surface. They are faced with their own emotional dependency, their own inability to function without external reinforcement. A narcissist builds their entire identity on the illusion of superiority. They construct a self-image that portrays them as more intelligent, more successful, more desirable, or more powerful than others. This illusion is not just something they show to the world, it is something they convince themselves of to avoid facing the deep insecurities they keep buried. They believe they are above others, that they deserve special treatment, and that their opinions, desires, and needs take precedence over everything else. This illusion is fragile, and it only remains intact as long as they can manipulate others into reinforcing it. When you walk away, when you remove yourself from their grasp and refuse to validate their false sense of importance, that illusion begins to crumble. A narcissist does not have true confidence. What they possess is arrogance, which is rooted in a desperate need to appear superior rather than actually feeling secure in themselves. Their sense of worth is entirely external, dependent on how others perceive them and how much control they have over those around them. They require constant reinforcement, whether through admiration, fear, or submission. As long as they have people who look up to them, comply with their demands, or react to their provocations, They can maintain the illusion that they are dominant, respected, and untouchable. However, when someone they once controlled walks away, it delivers a severe blow to their self-perception. The reason a narcissist cannot handle rejection or abandonment is that it directly contradicts the narrative they have built about themselves. If they were truly superior, why would someone leave them? If they were truly as powerful as they believe, why would anyone dare to challenge their authority? Your decision to walk away forces them to confront the truth. They are not as special or as indispensable as they like to think. This realization is unbearable for them because it threatens the very foundation of their identity. Rather than reflect inward and acknowledge their flaws, they will go to great lengths to convince themselves and others that the fault lies elsewhere. When a narcissist feels their superiority being challenged, they react in one of two ways. Some will lash out, attacking your character, belittling you, or spreading lies to regain control. They will attempt to make you feel small because in their mind, if they can diminish your worth, they can maintain their own. Others will play the victim, acting as though they have been wronged or betrayed, hoping to manipulate sympathy from others to restore their sense of power. Regardless of the approach, the goal remains the same: to preserve their illusion of superiority and avoid the painful reality that they are not as exceptional as they pretend to be. What makes this experience even more difficult for them is that they do not know how to process genuine self-doubt. A healthy individual, when faced with rejection or failure, may reflect on their actions, learn from their mistakes, and grow from the experience. A narcissist, however, lacks the emotional maturity to engage in self-reflection. Instead of acknowledging that they may have contributed to the loss of a relationship, they will blame others, rewrite history, or create a new narrative that allows them to maintain their illusion of dominance. This is why they often smear those who leave them, painting them as the villain while portraying themselves as the innocent party. Over time, as they lose more people who refuse to buy into their facade, their ability to sustain the illusion weakens. They may still try to present themselves as powerful and superior, but deep down, they feel the weight of their own insecurity. They become increasingly desperate for validation, constantly seeking new people to manipulate into providing the admiration they lost. However, the more they rely on external validation, the more unstable their sense of self becomes. Each time someone walks away, each time they are ignored or dismissed, their illusion of superiority shatters a little more, leaving them exposed to the reality they fear the most. They are not better than anyone else, and without the control they once had, they are just another person struggling to find meaning in a world that no longer revolves around them. A narcissist operates with the belief that people are interchangeable. They see relationships not as genuine connections, but as transactional exchanges where they receive admiration, attention, and control. Because of this mindset, they assume that if one person leaves, they can easily replace them with another. However, reality does not align with their expectation. While they may quickly seek out a new source of validation, finding someone who will tolerate their manipulation, cater to their ego, and provide them with the level of emotional investment they once had is far more challenging than they anticipate. When you walk away, they do not just lose a person, they lose a source of power, and replacing that loss is not as simple as they want it to be. At the beginning of a relationship, a narcissist is skilled at creating the illusion of an ideal connection. They mirror their target's desires, present themselves as exactly what the other person is looking for, and flood them with attention and admiration. This process, often referred to as love bombing, allows them to quickly establish emotional control. However, over time, their true nature begins to emerge. They start testing boundaries, pushing limits, and subtly shifting the dynamic in their favor. This cycle of idealization followed by devaluation is a pattern they repeat with every new person they engage with. The problem is that not everyone falls into the same patterns, and not every new target will react in the way the narcissist expects. When a narcissist loses someone who is deeply invested in them, the absence of that emotional supply creates an internal void. While they may immediately seek a new person to fill that gap, they quickly realize that starting over is not as effortless as they had assumed. Every person is different, and the level of control they were able to exert over you was not just because of their tactics. It was also because of the unique dynamic that existed between you. Finding someone who will provide the same level of emotional engagement, react in predictable ways, and endure their manipulation without resistance is not guaranteed. Some people recognize red flags early and walk away before a narcissist has a chance to establish control. Others may not be as emotionally available or invested, making them less susceptible to manipulation. The narcissist may find themselves in a cycle of trying to recreate what they lost, only to be met with frustration when they cannot replicate the same level of influence. One of the reasons narcissists struggle to replace you is that their relationships are built on dependency rather than genuine connection. They do not seek deep, meaningful bonds. They seek control and validation. Because of this, their relationships tend to follow a predictable trajectory: intense in the beginning, draining in the middle, and chaotic at the end. When they lose someone who once provided them with steady emotional reactions, they expect to find a replacement who will immediately offer the same level of engagement. However, people are not interchangeable, and each new interaction requires effort, patience, and time to develop the level of influence they once had. This is something the narcissist does not want to acknowledge, because it contradicts their belief that they are in control. The longer they go without a replacement, the more their internal insecurities begin to surface. They may resort to desperate tactics, such as attempting to rekindle old relationships, reaching out to past partners, or trying to provoke a reaction from you just to re-establish some sense of dominance. If they succeed in drawing you back in, they will likely repeat the same cycle, using temporary affection or remorse to regain control before eventually slipping back into their manipulative behavior. However, if you remain firm in your decision to walk away, they are forced to face a reality they cannot manipulate, the reality that you have moved on and that their influence over you has faded. As time passes and they struggle to find a suitable replacement, the narcissist may begin to experience a form of emotional withdrawal. Their ego depends on external reinforcement, and without a steady source of admiration, conflict, or submission, they start to feel insignificant. This is one of the most painful experiences for them because their entire identity is built on the illusion of importance. Without someone there to reflect their fabricated superiority back to them, they are left with nothing but their own internal emptiness, and that is a reality they will do anything to avoid.